Hello everybody, John Blunt again with one of our certification videos. This time it is for the jointer, which is designed to make the faces, number one purpose, most useful purpose, is to make the faces of curved boards flat. Now we have to do this if you want to do any kind of high quality work in a shop setting such as furniture, tables, chairs. Your wood does need to be truly flat and to a very accurate dimension and to accurate width, all 90-degree corners, or you'll have a very hard time succeeding in doing quality work. You can't buy it that way. There's a reason you can't buy it that way, and that is the nature of wood. When you cut a tree, the wood will bend. When it's sliced up, it springs a little bit. When it's dried, it moves a little bit more. Oh, you end up with your 10-foot boards coming from the lumberyard, already dried, that have a lot of curve to them. At 10 feet, it's too long to include a flat piece inside it. It's not made flat because if they tried to make it flat, you may be able to see this. There's a little bit of curve across the bottom of that. This is an exaggerated board. If you extrapolate that this curve continues right here, there's a lift to this board from this point to this point. That's up in the air about 1/4 of an inch. If you want a flat board out of this board, you're going to lose 1/4 of an inch right here and right here, and you may not even have 3/4 of an inch left in this. If you're talking about an 8-foot board or a 10-foot board, it's almost never going to contain a straight 3/4 inch board if it starts off at 1 inch, which is what lumber starts off at, regular inches, exceptions. So they don't try because they don't know how long you want it. We buy a thicker, we cut it shorter. If this were shorter, you can fit a thicker piece in it because the total rise is less. The straight line has less of a gap right here. So that's why we do it, and the jointer is the tool that does flatten lumber for you. The cutter head is a cylinder with straight knives on it. The cylinder carries 3 knives. In this particular jointer, they do vary how many knives there are, and it spins at a high enough speed that in effect it is a cylinder, completely a cylinder of wood removing. It's going to be gone after it goes over that spinning cutter head. So the cutter head in the setup for this machine is set at the same height as this table. Those knives get inserted and adjusted to match the height of this table, and then the final adjustment is done with this table with a lever down there and a lock mechanism, and then you leave that. This is all one plane right to the cutter heads. This table is lowered. The amount that it goes down determines how much material is going to be removed from the bottom of this piece of wood, which happens to be curved this way, as it passes over the cutter head. You drop this lower, it cuts more off. This is how the 2 tables and the cutter head are made to work together to provide you with the opportunity to make your piece of wood move within a plane without any change as it moves, except that direction. You got a flat plane here, you got a flat plane here, you got a cutter head between them. The cutter head is on the level of this. As this crosses over the cutter head, it cuts it off right on this level. It's producing a little bit of a flat cut at a minimum, partially, and then you will continue. As long as you can move this without wobbling it or in the case of starting off wrong, wobbling it this way, one was twist, and the other was what they call bow and crown, the crown side down. So you have to address those two issues to be able to control it as it travels. There's no rocking going on there. You can see that. And I am producing a cut that is flat on the bottom of it. If this little distance, this large distance right here were smaller, and I were cutting a larger cut by lowering this table further, then I might get a flat surface in one pass. If you don't get it in one pass, you take it again until you've cut the entire surface flat. That's basically how it works. So I'm going to show you the lowering, how the tables are adjusted. I'm not going to move this one. I'm just going to move this one. This one is set up in the original setup. Each time you change the cutters here, you need to reset that to match them. I don't want to change it because it's time consuming. You're getting it right. It's a very precise requirement right there. But I'm only getting a little bit of a cut right now. And I want to, maybe I want to make a deeper cut. I would do that by unlocking. You might want to zoom in here. Unlocking this lock and tapping this arm. I can't move it without a jump. I lowered it way far, much farther than you want to lower it. You want to lower it when it's taking too many passes. Or when you're in a hurry and don't care if you get some chips on the surface. You want to go less of a cut, which means raise the table, when it's tearing out really badly or you're having problems pushing it through. So those are the reasons to adjust it. I will show you the right, what I think is the right starting point. But basically with this machine, it's not an exact amount being taken off. You can't control the thickness with this machine anyway. You want to sort of have a good safe starting point, and then you tweak it until it's cutting right for your batch of wood. And that takes practice, and it takes a little post-video coaching, maybe the first time you come in. So I'm going to show you a close-up. We don't use the scale in our shop because it's really not very good scale on this. But you don't really need a scale. You're not working with exact. You're working with reasonable amounts as a starting point, and then you tweak it. So what we do to get our starting point is we take a nice clean cut piece of wood and we look at that spot right there. And a good starting point is maybe a 32nd of an inch. When you get experienced, it'll be very automatic for you. But in the meantime, 32nd is a mystery to some people, and this is for beginners. A piece of cardboard from a notepad is really pretty close. So you can double check it that way. It won't be long before you look at that and say, yeah, that's about a 32nd. That's a starting point, and we've already told you about you can tweak it according to how the cutting action is actually working. As the wood moves over the cutter head, it's traveling in a flat line right here, and it's being cut off by the cutter, which is the same height as the outfeed table, so it slides right on the outfeed table. You can see that the wood is supported on the infeed table by the part that hasn't been cut off and is riding level anyway. And there it's going to finish the cut and continue off the table. Two flat surfaces. Another pass will cut more and more until you meet the center. Then you have a flat surface to work with for the next step, which is the planer, to copy the flat surface to the curved surface on top. Crown refers to the direction of a bow. A bow is a lengthwise curve of the whole face of the board. The crown is the top side, the centered high side of the curve on the convex side of the board. You can think of the crown of a hill to remember it. It is the high spot of a hill. You need to determine that and mark your material so that you can work with some speed when you're doing your jointing. Now we do that, you can do that by eye. You sight it. That's a little error prone, difficult for beginners to master, and slow. If you have a flat surface, which every jointer has at least a small flat surface you can work on, you can crown by checking it by feel. I'm going to demonstrate how to do that. You can also detect twist, which you can't see. And if you can detect twist, then you can have some tricks at hand to eliminate twist, which has some important effects on the actual level of quality of the final product. If you set your piece of wood onto one of your flat surfaces, in this case a short section on a jointer for a short piece of wood, and you push down on one end like this, you will lift up if the crown is down. If the crown is down, of course, that also means that as you move it along, it's going to rock back and forth because you will only have one line of contact, and it's like a wheel. You can't hold it flat. So we mark the other side with an X. This is fairly universal among shops. The X means crown side, that means up, and that means it's touching at both ends. You can place your hands on it and feel it, not rock or not do anything in the way of tipping, staying in that plane. You can feel that. Good. Once you have it set in the correct crown position, you can rock the corners. You can rock it. See if it rocks from one corner to the other. And if it does, then the other corner isn't going to rock because twist goes. In this case, when I push here and it lifts up here, that means the twist is upward here and twist is upward here. And when it doesn't move right here, that's the straight line that this is folded around. We use a mark like this to indicate that these two corners represents the points that naturally contact. With that information, you can get rid of the twist by keeping your hand on one side only while you're feeding it across the jointer. This is a shorthand that represents a straight line from here to here. Don't cross over the line. If you do, you're going to have rocking happen. If you don't, and you keep pressure here, again, you've got 3 points of contact, a tripod. When you start feeding it, it will cut this corner first and leave a little bare spot right there. Then you do it again until it's all gone. Standard practice. Once you have all of this determined, on the side that is not the crown side, we mark it with pencil marks. It can be difficult to tell the difference between a part that's cut with a jointer and a part that came as original from the store which very likely has been planed in a similar fashion. There's two other things you need to know before you actually run this board over the jointer. One is a shop rule for safety: don't ever put your thumb on the back edge. Just don't do it. If it's sometimes hard to push through, and you're tempted, don't do it, because we can fix the hard to push through a lot better, faster than we can fix your thumb. We don't want to do that. Don't do that even if you're far away. That's our shop rule. The other thing to know is if you have a curve and the board's fairly thin or it's fairly long, when you push down you can bend it flat. That'll defeat your purpose because it'll just spring back up after you pushed it through. And it can also create a little bit of bouncing up and down if you have to move your hands, and that's more common on a long board. So you have to do a little bit of pressure, and that also means that you're not going to get a really flat surface on a very thin board or a very long board because you won't be able to help pressing it down flat. You might do it anyway to get rid of short waves that are in the bottom of the board. It's marked and ready to run. We have these push blocks which we require the beginners to use. I'm going to press down on all the way across this face here, and using the tripod I will put this one behind it a little bit and put a little rocking motion this way. Hold that steady and move the whole thing as a unit over the cutter head. And here it is. We got rid of all the lines, as you can see, because I guess it was set deep enough for the amount of twist that was there, but you can see that it didn't quite touch this side, which was one of the sides that was up in the air. The side that was up in the air, because I was holding it tripod down, corner here. That's the one that was up. It takes one more pass, and then it will be jointed on one face, and it will be flat. Now that we have a nice flat surface here, it's very flat. We need to copy that flat surface to the opposite side. It doesn't work to do this on the planer, on the jointer, I'm sorry, because it'll wobble and because you won't be parallel to this. So we take it to the planer, which copies the bottom side to the top side, which if it's flat, will be flat, and regulates how thick it is. And we need to do that before we can do the edges and take advantage of an opportunity to avoid tear out from contrary grain, which I will explain momentarily. Here's why it's a good idea to flatten the face with the jointer, then match it flat with the planer. It gives you an opportunity to improve your prospects of not having torn out surfaces from contrary grain that points the wrong direction for cutting. If you look at the face or the edge of this board, you can see what I've indicated, which is just a drawing. If those were the dark lines that are the winter wood rings of the tree, those are very strong. The summer wood is soft and doesn't provide much support. If you have the round cutter doing this, it's going to encounter that hard part, push on the soft part, and it'll bend that hard part up into there, and without enough support, it will break it. Another way to look at it is, it's a cat. And going to the other side, just to explain that, if you're brushing the cat's fur from the head down, everything smooths out. If you brush it from the tail up, it pulls everything up. If you have a wooden cat, you're going to tear the fur off. So you want to be able to control that. Direction. And you can't do it when you do the edges necessarily unless both sides are flat. for setting it up to plane the front. If your wood is prone to tear out, many species of wood don't have this problem, but if you're having that problem, you look at the grain and you want to feed it in a direction that looks like that. So you're brushing the cat's fur the favorable direction, and it does sometimes defy you and do the opposite, but mostly that is a good information. That means I'm going to hold it like this and run it through. If I only make one flat face, which is what many people teach, and then I flip it up like this and put it on this fence for edging, and the grain just happens coincidentally to be different on this direction, that's against the grain. It will chip your edge. It may be lucky and it goes the other way. If you do not have, if you flip it this way, it doesn't make any difference. You have to flip it this way. If you flip it this way, then you don't have a flat surface to set against this to get a straight edge and a 90-degree angle. Do that, the planer first, and bring your cart full of material back over to do the edging, and you have the chance to avoid that tear out because you can flip it over like this. I'm going to show you how it's actually done. You got two flat surfaces, so you have less wild geometry to worry about. This is set at 90 degrees to that surface, so it will make a nice square corner right here if you hold it against the fence. I'm going to demonstrate this from this side. You actually do it from the other side, and we'll do some cuts from the other side, but you do need to have your hands down low enough on this fence so that it doesn't tip like that without you knowing it. And so you go down halfway down the board against the fence, and then you feed it. Before you start feeding it, you got one geometric issue to address. If it rocks, it might rock while you're traveling, and it won't generate a clean, straight edge. If it does rock, you flip it over. The two sides almost always move in concentric curves. So you flip it over and you're good. This didn't rock at all, so it was a good piece. Now it's a matter of feeding it through. I'm going to have to lift it over the cutter without passing your hand over the cutter because you have to be down low. And it might only be this tall. So the way we work it is we just walk it along like this. Flat from the jointer, parallel and also flat for equal thickness from the planer, straight from what we just did, and it has one wild edge left, which means, and that's done with the table saw, and then you have a fully processed piece of wood for your project. That concludes this section, and thank you very much, and come visit us. I will see you here.